with my old friend Rosemary, and we met at the Center for Spiritual Living. And now Rosemary is fortunate enough to be in Florida, in sunny Florida.
Yeah. Hi, Delia.
Hi, it's so nice to see you.
Good to
So,
see you too.
yeah, it was quite a challenge getting everything working. So let's just start. Like, I'm just curious about how you came on your path to being a writer and all the what led up to your businesses. I know you've had your own business for quite some time.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier today about some of the questions you might ask and asking about my career, and I thought, God, I've had many careers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the writing piece, pretty much when I was a teenager, I did a lot of writing. And I wrote a lot of poetry and just some free verse and so forth, and just kept doing that and never really thought anything about it. Um, Fast forward to when I was about 40 years old, and I went through a major, career change, downsized from a corporation,
Huh.
and really started thinking about what did I want to do with the rest of my life. I started looking at different career options. And although writing wasn't the path that I was going to take, I started doing consulting, but it wound up where I did a lot of writing as a result of doing the consulting. And that's how I started with all the books that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So, I spent I always joke about it. I spent 20 some years in corporate America and, did the 80-hour weeks and did
Oh
all
my
that
gosh.
crazy stuff and left in 1990 and spent another 20 some years helping people get out of corporate America.
Right.
So
Oh,
that's
that's
how I started the whole career consulting side in the early 90s.
right. That was really a good idea because there were a lot of people struggling with
Yeah.
careers.
Yeah, oh yeah. And it was, I did an evaluation of what is it that I'm really good at, and I followed all the books and made the list and said the things that I enjoy most was, helping people, teaching people.
Mm-hmm.
I was really good at communicating and so forth. And some crazy thing came up about writing and writing resumes and helping people in job search. And as a result, that wound up being a huge 25-year career
Wow.
of helping people do that.
And how did you find your customers at the time?
This was in the early 90s, and I was living in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And I first started where I contacted everybody that I knew and said, let me write your resume for you as
Wow.
practice and let me work the bugs out. And then I did back in the 90s, you did face to face networking, and the internet wasn't around
Mm-hmm.
just yet. And I had a yellow page ad and was part of a number of networking groups. And so a lot of was from word of mouth, and what
Wow.
wasn't from word of mouth came from the yellow pages. And I worked out of my home, and I had people in and out constantly. My neighbors really wondered what I was doing because I'd have, five people a day sometimes coming in,
Wow.
and I would do, a whole consultation around their resume, interviewing skills, the whole job search process. And all that sort of culminated to where I wrote my first book and released that in 1995, which was all around the job search piece.
Right. And what was the name of that book again?
It's facing changes in employment, and interestingly, it still applies today. All the
Absolutely.
things that I wrote in it. So,
Yeah.
and then not long after I did the book in 95 and was really a household name, I was running a weekly group through a church where I had executives who were being downsized, and they would
Oh.
come, and it was like a weekly meeting of, what do you do and how do you cope, and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. And so I was in the newspaper. I had a column in the Rocky Mountain News, and I was writing weekly, column on, job search and all the different things that went with it.
Wow.
So I was pretty well known. I was a household name in Denver. Everybody knew who Rosemary Augustine was. All my competition would say to me when they would see me at these networking groups, God, I see you everywhere. You're in the newspaper, you're in the TV, you're in the on the radio. My God. And I would say, hey, I guess my marketing is working. So, today's world it's a little different because it's all internet.
Yeah.
The internet started for me in 1996. I was in a at a luncheon, and there was a fellow there who was doing web design, and so I said, I think I need to get involved and have a website. We're kind of coming to this. We've been playing with email for a year or so.
Uh-huh.
You need to have a website. And he was the one that really kind of guided me on, how to create a website. He did it for me, but
Great.
he helped in saying, what we need on a home page and a FAQ page and, your whole, your book and so forth. And I don't know what little angel was on my shoulder the day I created my name for my URL, but I came up with the URL of careeradvice.com.
Mm.
I still own that URL. I don't do as much career consulting as I did years ago. I still have a handful of clients that will still work with me, and
Mm-hmm.
they follow me from everywhere that I've been living.
Oh, wow.
But I still own that URL because it's quite a catchy name.
Yeah. So I guess people are still finding you on that.
Yeah, they do. They
Uh-huh.
do. But I only take referrals or people that I've worked with in the past at this point.
Okay.
I don't take anybody that's brand new unless they've been referred in by somebody. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I've kind of changed directions. That was the '90s, the mid '90s, and by I guess it was around 1998 or so is when I started making some changes in myself because I was realizing that you know, you get burned out just as much as the people you're working with that are
Right.
burned out from their jobs. And, I had written thousands of resumes,
Oh my gosh.
taught classes 2 or 3 days a week. I was doing career consulting with one of the major outplacement firms. So I was, doing their work as well. So it was like sometimes 6 or 7 days a week
Yeah.
wasn't really, what I wanted to have long term. So I started shifting and changing, and it was about 1998. I worked with a coach, someone that I knew, and talked about what were some of the things that I could transition to. In addition to, I was looking at relocating to the East Coast. I'm from New Jersey. I had
Okay.
lived in Denver for 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and something was drawing me back to the East Coast. So, as I really started to evaluate that, and that started in '98, um, I took a scouting trip in '99 to kind of look at places of where I was going to live. And
Mm-hmm.
um, by about the year 2000 is when I started packing up and making the move. And I actually moved in 2001 in June and moved back to not my hometown, but a few miles away, which was kind of interesting.
Uh-huh.
Back to some place you hadn't been in 30 years.
Yeah.
So, but in that transition, I continued to work with that outplacement firm and went from their Denver office to their Philadelphia office. So I was able
Oh,
to
wow.
bridge that piece of it and continue to do career consulting through the outplacement
How
firm.
about that? So
Yeah,
you really didn't have to just like take a whole totally different path and kind of lose everything that you had.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
good.
Yeah. And right around the time that I was getting ready to move is when I came out with my second book. I had a lot of peer pressure that wanted me to do some classes the year before I left on this whole piece around living and working your passion.
Mm.
And I had started the book and finally had gotten it finished and published. And that was published in October of 2000. And I was just busy for like 6 months doing, so many workshops around that because people were just, you can't leave without giving us this workshop. So,
Wow.
so in that transition, then I, settled into suddenly East Coast life that I hadn't been in for 30 years. And so it was quite a culture shock for me.
Huh.
You know, I
Yeah,
was,
I
I
guess
was,
so.
yeah, I had lived in Denver and I wore cowboy boots and fringe
Yeah,
jackets and
it is kind of more of a relaxed lifestyle, I think.
yeah. And so I had to really make sure I maintained my identity, so to speak, and really kind of kept wearing some of my Western wear for a while just to stay comfortable.
So
Um,
Rosemary, let me ask you, how did you get to be, how do you think like in your personality you got to be have such an entrepreneurial spirit to have done that, all on your own at such, without a lot of mentors or anybody to really follow?
well, my father was an entrepreneur.
Oh, okay, cool.
So my father had a business. He was a dry cleaner, and he started at like 16 or 17 years old, and had his little business. He also was a musician, and so when he and my mother got married, and then they moved to New York City, my father did the whole 15 years of career as a musician,
Oh,
and
wow.
this was in the 1930s and 40s, around the big band era, and he played with groups like Jack Teagarden and Tommy Dorsey and
How about
countless
that?
all those names. So, and then as the kids started to come along, my parents decided to go back to the small town and raise the family, and he went into the dry cleaning business that he had done as a teenager. So, I look at my dad. He was a huge influence on me as a business owner. Huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so he died when I was in my 30s.
Mm.
So I didn't really get to, you know, really tap into some of the things that you want to know about because he died suddenly.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah.
But I still maintained his perseverance and some of the ways that he went about things, and
Mm-hmm.
so he taught me well on that. So
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound like you had much fear about things.
oh, I did and I didn't. And so any fear that I did have, I had to really work on that fear, and those fears were written a lot about in that book, How to Live and Work Your Passion.
Mm,
Because a lot of times that's why people don't pursue what they're doing is because of the fear.
right.
So I have a lot of chapters in there that's that's around that. So.
That's great. So did you feel pretty driven? Like, did you feel like this is what I'm meant to do and I must, do what I have to do?
Yes,
Yeah.
the writing piece
Mm-hmm.
and the books are definitely a driven piece in my life. I tried to walk away from it a couple of times. When I moved east, I was 12 years before I published my next book.
Mm,
I kept writing, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and kept things and just said, well, someday, 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 because I had other things. I had family stuff going on, and
yeah.
as we got into the past the first decade here, 2010 or so, that's when I really suddenly had to put a few things on hold because I was caring for my aging mother.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I kept writing and I kept working. There was a point when I moved east and kept doing the consulting. There was a point that I gave that up and said, I'm going back to work full time. I mean, I really walked away from a lot of stuff and
Wait, so
just,
what did you do full time? What
I went back into the corporate world and
you
worked
did?
full time. Yeah. In 2005, it was.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And
a switch.
yeah, it was a huge switch because I was burned out. I was really burned out from just working with, helping people and helping them and working with them on this career stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, you
And
know,
what did you do for corporate at that point? More still writing, I presume, right?
sure.
Yeah.
When I walked away, I just said I'm going to take my advice that I give my clients. So, and so I went into it was interesting. I had a couple different jobs. I worked for an airline. I worked for a really neat seminar company for about 5 years. And then in 2011 is when I said, I've had enough of the full time. That's it. I'm done. I'm only going to work part time. I still work part time, but
Uh-huh.
I work part time now because of structure. I have moved from an interesting direction in my life to this very creative, right brain thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And without a little bit of structure, I'm like all over the place.
Mm.
So I've had to really just say, I think it's time that I just have something that's, 15 hours a week, gives me a little bit of structure, gives me, I still operate at, an incredible pace. So, but that's what I consider one income pot. And then I've got my books. I've come
Uh-huh.
out with quite a few books
Yeah.
in the last few years. So I have all these little different income pots that create the world of Rosemary Augustine and her Blue Spruce Publishing.
Cool. And are you still doing meetup groups and stuff now? I know you were doing some of that before you left.
Yes, the meetup group that I was running, I had two of them that I was running: journaling circles and self-publishing for writers. And the journaling circles I took online and were a Facebook group.
Oh, cool.
It was a private group for a while. I've opened it up, and we'll post things that we do from an art journaling standpoint. So there's not a whole lot of activity, but there's enough posting to encourage people to you know do their creativity. The self-publishing for writers, that meetup that I ran for 3.5 years, I turned that over to another author.
Oh.
But in a 6 month period from the time I relocated till about last fall, um, you know, he sort of disbanded the group. He changed the
Mm.
venue, upped the price, changed the whole format, and people dropped out. And so when I got the email that he was disbanding the group after he was the one that had approached me
Yeah.
to take over the group, I I said to him, I'll take the group back. I'll work the group from long distance. And so he was like, no, no, well, let me see what we're going to do. Well, meanwhile, I was approached by several people in the group
Mm-hmm.
and asked, would I do something long distance?
Yeah.
So I said, I got to think about this. I did a survey, and the survey was like 90% of them came back and said, please, yes,
Uh,
please. So in January, I started the self publishing group, and we meet monthly online, and it's a teleconference. And so, I've already got at least 12 people that attend every month.
wow.
And we're working on, marketing and dealing with the different quirks of Create Space and Ingram Spark and all the different platforms out there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
So you're the person to go to. I mean, some people wouldn't even know what platforms are out there for
exactly,
self-publishing. So
exactly.
there's a
Yeah,
lot of information and there's a lot of good places and bad places. So it's good to have someone who's experienced to know that stuff.
yeah. I'm on 4 different platforms right now, and I just signed up to do some books with Ingram Spark. They're a little pricey from a standpoint of just doing your own thing,
Mm,
but it's understanding all the quirks. And that's the piece that helps everybody with these monthly calls that we do.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so who do you attribute most of your like inspiration from? Any particular writers that you always liked as a child or anything like that?
As a child, I've often been asked that question, and I don't really, I can't really think of who might have been that inspiration. I was the youngest of 3 kids,
Uh-huh.
but there's quite a few years difference between us. There's 7 between my sister and I, and 10 between my brother and
Wow.
I.
Yeah.
So I was sort of like an only child.
Mhm.
And I was very creative. And my parents were just like, oh God. You they every time I would come up with some silly creative idea on something, they would just roll their eyes and just say, I think you need to spend more time on your homework. So, um, but as I got into my adult years, a big influence on me was Julia Cameron.
Mhm. That's who I thought you'd say.
Yeah, yeah. Julia Cameron. I had an opportunity to meet her
Oh yeah?
quite a few years ago in New York City. I met her at a women's group that there was like 300 women in the room, and she spoke, and she's very soft spoken, but it was just so wonderful to meet her and go up to her and shake
Yeah.
her hand and and ask her questions and when I told her that I have license plates that say journal, she laughed and she said it's pretty clever. So another big influence and person who inspired me was Dan Poynter.
Hmm.
Dan Poynter is or was a big uh, self-publishing author and guru. They called him the godfather of self-publishing. He has since passed away last year, and but I've met him numerous times, and I have a photograph of the two of us together that when we met, I think it was in 2009 or 2011 that we met and had dinner together
Uh-huh.
at a conference. And I just treasure that picture because I see it, I have it up in my office, and it just reminds me that I need to continue to make Dan proud,
Oh.
publishing side. So it's just interesting the people who have really touched my life and inspired me on those
Yeah.
things.
And how about all the people you inspire? I'm sure there's a lot of people who are published now thanks to your help.
I'll tell you, Delia, I never realized the people that I touched their lives and changed their lives, not only with the career consulting,
Mm.
but with the book publishing. And the day that we had the final meetup where I was leaving, and
Mhm.
there must have been 30 people that came to that. And I mean, I had tears in my eyes because I didn't realize. And that group had 180 people in it when I left. And there was, I'd say, close to half of them I was involved in their launching of their book. So
Wow.
that is like, wow, really? And yeah, that
That's awesome.
really, never realized that until that was told to me by the group. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very humbling to think, wow, you never know who you touch.
Yeah.
You never do.
And so what do you think about what's going on now about, all the information available and all the ability to self-publish versus the old-fashioned way? Where do you think we're headed with material, with reading material?
Well, obviously the internet's here to stay. Um, the sad part is that the bookstores have dwindled,
Mhm.
but paper books, I do believe, will always exist because there will be people who want a paper book.
Yeah.
There will be people who want to read their book on an iPad or some type of e-reader.
Mhm.
um, the fact that there's so many platforms and so many different companies that are trying to push their product, come with us, we'll publish your book, and we'll design it and print it and so forth. um, there's a handful of places that are good,
Yeah.
and and so that's part of the group that I run to just make sure that they understand why I suggest certain platforms because of the ease and the visibility that they give you.
Mhm.
The big New York publishers, there's so few of them left, and the average person, unfortunately, will never be able to publish with them.
Mhm.
And for a number of reasons, because the big publishers, they want someone who's already famous,
Mhm.
and there's a huge turnaround time. It's usually 18 to 24 months from the time you sign a contract with a New York publisher to then actually be in print.
Wow, that's
So,
really long.
yeah, very long. Where for you as an independent publisher, publishing on your own and using some of the platforms out there, as quick as you can write it and have it edited and have a cover designed, your turnaround time can be, days, weeks, or no more than a month.
Wow, yeah.
So, it's just a matter of really making sure that you're, providing a professional quality piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's another drawback to the independent publishing is that anybody can write a book and anybody can upload it to, let's say, CreateSpace or Ingram Spark or, Barnes and Noble's Nook Press, or even on the e-readers with the Kindle. Anybody
Mm,
can just upload their
yeah.
manuscript.
So you're not really getting quality.
Yeah, it's making sure that you've got the quality out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's easy to write it. That's the easiest part is writing it. The hardest part is marketing. That's the tricky part is the marketing piece.
Right.
So,
And if it's no good, people aren't going to read it.
well, it's not if it's no good. It's the question of getting it out there for people to read it,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether it's good or not good.
Right.
It's being visible enough for people to read it.
So what would you recommend besides contacting you for people who are interested in writing and want to get their book published, and whether self-published or whatever, they want to know how to do that marketing and get themselves out there?
Yeah, I think it's real important that somebody really takes the time and does their research. And they go to places like Ingram Spark, CreateSpace. They're the two biggest competitors. They're the two what I consider the best ones out there for the independent publisher. And from that standpoint, really going through and looking at understanding their terms, their conditions,
Mm,
what's really involved, and really determining whether how much of it they can do on their own versus paying, because both places you can do it basically for free, and yet they also offer, where you can pay thousands of dollars for them to do it for you.
right, right.
So there's, like anything, there's a lot of free stuff out there. It's just being able to filter through it and not be too overwhelmed, because that's the problem with the internet. We're
Yeah,
overwhelmed with information, and it's really determining, is this accurate? Is this true? Um, I mean, it's going to the reliable sources.
yeah. That's the hardest thing to figure out, who's reliable, because everybody's going to come at you and tell you they're going to do a great job for you. Just hand them all this
Yeah,
money.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And then I've worked with people that they've gone to other platforms, and I've asked the question, well, why did you go with that platform instead of Amazon or Ingram? And so they would give me a response that, well, they were cheaper, or their shipping was cheaper, or their per book price was cheaper, or the sizing, they offered the size that I wanted.
Hmm.
And and I and several people, I've worked with them on the phone, and I said, let's go online together and let me see what you're talking about, because I've looked at them all and I know the ins and outs on who offers the discount on shipping and who doesn't,
Wow. Yeah.
when you buy one copy or you buy 100 copies,
Uh-huh.
what your difference is going to be on your discount. So yeah, it's a very interesting world.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's interesting that you were able to, weed everything out and really understand it and, come up with the idea of what's best and what's not, because there is too much information to.
Oh, way too much, way too much. And back in 1995 when I did my first book, the way you did it was so different. I mean, I actually brought in a manuscript
Mm,
and I looked at blue lines. I mean, blue lines don't exist anymore. And I was involved in a group back then called Colorado Independent Publishers Association. At one point, I was actually the president. So, I mean, I was speaking at different writers groups back then in talking about self-publishing.
wow.
So to have seen how the world changed from the internet coming on board and the fear of books going away and watching the bookstores dwindle,
Mm-hmm.
but now we're on a, like print on demand, so to speak, on a lot of books,
Yeah.
where you want something and you can have it tomorrow, kind of thing. So books aren't going away.
Uh-huh. So, how do you spend your time now? I mean, like, what are you doing the most of right now? You still writing?
I'm still writing. I'm working on a few more books to publish. I came out with the password book that I did last fall. And that password book is, my kitty cat Ziggy. He has his own Facebook page,
Yeah.
his own website, and it's interesting because I guess it was in 2012 or somewhere around then, that I came out with that first cat book, Secrets I Learned from Ordinary House Cats.
Uh-huh.
And I was at a holiday gift show, and the books were just flying off the table. And I thought, this is strange. I'm here trying to sell my journals and my journal prompt book, and people are like, I must have sold 50 books in like a couple of hours.
Wow.
Cat book, and I thought, I think I'm onto something here. So that little book has done very well, and so then I came out with another book about a cat that I had for 18 years, Adventures with Byron, and then I did the password book because I had done Facebook and the website, and I came out with this where you as a human, you write your passwords down, and it and it and it holds like 500 passwords, and it's an 8 by 10 book. So I came out with that. That's done extremely well as well.
Well, I'm not sure. How does that work? I mean, can't you just write your passwords down on paper?
You can, but there's a sample of the book. You can probably see some of my passwords.
Oh gosh.
but but it's the idea is we have so many passwords,
Yeah.
and I used to have a little small, like an address book that was for passwords,
Right.
and I filled it in no time. And so when I did this book, I transferred everything, and I said, "Oh my!" And I'm up to like 300 passwords at this point.
Wow.
So many different websites that you go to
I
that
know.
require a password, and you're not supposed to have the same password for everything. And they've got all these different combinations, capital and
Yeah,
letters
exactly.
and all that. So I've done that little book, and I did it as a cat story. So you look at it and you think, oh, this is just a cat book, but you open it up and it's where your passwords are. So where I'm going with this is I'm going to do another one, but as a dog book.
I'll get all the dog lovers
I get
involved.
all dog lovers. So, and I've already selected a little dog. Uh,
Oh wow.
yeah, Jenny, that belongs to my friend Anita and Larry Larson.
Oh,
So I'm getting ready to get that up and out of here, in the next month or so.
that's
So
fun.
yeah, yeah. And then there's the other thing that I want to do is a hardback on that Secrets I Learned from Ordinary House Cats, and that's the experiment that I'm doing with Ingram Spark,
Oh,
because they offer the hardback covers and with a dust jacket. So I'm looking to do that.
that sounds good.
So.
And how do you like living down in Florida?
Well, there's nothing to not like about it. I'm just loving every second of it.
Oh, good.
I'm sitting on my patio right at the moment.
You look comfortable.
Beautiful sunny day. I came down here and been here a year, and the summer everyone said, "Oh my God, you're moving to Florida and it's going to be summertime, and why don't you wait until winter?" And the summer was really not that bad.
Yeah.
So, being from the Philadelphia area, it really is no different. It's just, that's all. It's just longer.
Yeah.
So, but I'm enjoying it, and
Good.
I have company come and visit me every so often, and
What part of Florida are you at?
I'm in Central Florida on the Atlantic coast side.
Okay.
So I'm not too far from Cape Canaveral, the Kennedy Space Center. I'm about maybe I'd say no more than 25, 30 miles from there.
Oh, that's good.
I can see the launches from my front porch.
That's awesome. Yeah.
A little scary when they take off and the building rattles.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
But I'm close to the beach, and I go and walk on the beach, a couple times a week.
Nice.
We have a great swimming pool here where I live. So, and you can swim year round if it's warm enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have a chilly January and February. So, but overall, it's
That's great.
wish I had
Great.
done it sooner, but the timing was right. Now that I'm,
Good.
hmm
Good. I'm glad you're happy.
yeah, yeah.
So, is there anybody that any contact information you want to leave for the recording? Is there any you still want any more business in any respects or?
Well, I think it's important for people to kind of take a look at my different websites
Okay.
because I do, I do some consulting and different kinds of consulting.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the most important piece is anybody who wants to be a writer or wants to publish.
Yeah.
It's important for them to really know about, the group that runs once a month, the self-publishing group.
Yeah, that sounds really valuable.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what's your website called?
The website, it's my publishing company, so it's Blue Spruce, just like the tree, bluesprucepublishing.com,
Okay.
and you'll see a link there for the self-publishing group. And then for me personally, it's my rosemaryaugustine.com. So
Okay.
you'll see all my books, and you'll see some of the art that I do because I've become an artist in the last 15 years as well.
Nice.
Feed my creativity.
Uh-huh.
So, and I work in mixed media collage, so that's my favorite. And and then the other website is the cat website.
Uh-huh.
So there's two places. It's either Thank God I am a feline.com. That's Ziggy's website. Or you can go find him on Facebook, and he's under Ziggy Secrets if you're already logged into Facebook.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I'm sure you'll get a lot more people looking at it.
Ziggy has over 1,700 people that follow him on Facebook.
That's amazing.
I
Wow.
barely have 150 people as an author. He's got 1,700.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, he's really he's soaking it up. Let me
I
tell you.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to do this interview. It was fun talking with you.
Oh, this was a lot of fun, Delia, and I didn't know what to expect, so I just thought, oh, we'll just go with the flow and
Yeah.
and see what happens. So
Uh,
hopefully we can do it again.
okay, great. Well, thank you, and it's nice talking to you.
Good talking to you. Bye bye.
Bye.